us today at the Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial. Each year on this day, we gather here to remember the 2,977 innocent people killed on September 11th, 2001, including the many with ties to Wisconsin. Among them was Andrea Haberman, a 25-year-old Kewaskum High School graduate whose life was tragically cut short in the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Our memorial stands here as a place of remembrance, but also as a place of education. It is our responsibility to ensure that future generations, students, and even adults who were not yet born on that day understand both the magnitude and the loss and the unity and resilience and courage that followed the events of that day. Today's program reflects that mission. We'll hear stories from those personally impacted. We'll honor the service of our first responders and military members, and we will pay tribute through music and ceremony. I want to thank our volunteers, our partners, and all of you here today for helping us keep our promise and fulfilling our mission. And with that, I'd like you to all please rise as we invite Joel Lewin to lead us in today's invocation.
Good afternoon. Today we pause in solemn remembrance of September 11th, 2001. We honor the lives taken, the families forever changed, and the countless acts of courage shown in the face of fear and destruction. We hold in our hearts the first responders, service members, and ordinary people who showed extraordinary strength in the face of tragedy. May this day call us to unity, compassion, and peace. May we find healing in memory, strength in community, and hope in the generations to come. We pray for peace and healing for our nation, for all people across the world who long for safety, justice, and hope. May the memory of September 11th inspire us not only to mourn, but also to learn, to teach, and to carry forward the lessons of unity and resilience. Help us to educate future generations so they may understand the weight of this history, honor the sacrifices made, and be steadfast in building a world where love is stronger than hate, and peace triumphs over violence. We commit ourselves to teaching and learning the lessons of this history so that those who come after us may understand its weight, carry forward the stories of resilience and courage. Let our remembrance not end with silence, but live through education, action, and compassion, so that never forget becomes more than words. It becomes a guide for how we live. Amen.
Thank you. Now we will have the presentation of the flags by American Legion Post 384 Honor Guard.
Hi, Major. Take command.
Thank you. Now, if we could have our two Kewaskum Middle School 8th graders, Bennett Bishop and Evelyn Dorn, please come to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Bennett and Evelyn. Please stay standing now for our national anthem, performed by members of the Kewaskum High School Band and led by their director of bands, Mr. Joshua Micklick. Thank you to our student musicians, and it is now my honor to welcome Gordon Haberman and his daughter Julie Haberman Osmus. Gordon is the father of Andrea Haberman, a Kewaskum graduate that was killed in the North Tower on September 11th, 2001, and Julie is Andrea's sister. And today they will introduce our keynote speakers.
Good afternoon. My name is Gordon Haberman. Thank you for attending our anniversary services commemorating that tragic day 24 years ago when our country was boldly attacked by Islamic extremists. By day's end of 9/11/2001, 2,977 innocent people have been murdered as a result of those attacks. Over 6,000 were wounded, and the deaths continue to this day, caused by exposure to the toxic conditions present at what became known as ground zero.
One of those murdered in the North Tower of the World Trade Center was our daughter and my sister, Andrea Lynn Haberman. Like so many others, Andrea was doing what Americans do on any given weekday. She was going to work. The airplane that drove into the North Tower hit the building on the 93rd floor, one floor above where she was. They were all alive on her floor after the plane hit, but trapped, and were desperately trying to find their way down.
It would be no one from our floor or higher in the North Tower survived. The attacks prompted the largest emergency responses in this country's history. Also going to work that day was the New York City Fire Department. Without regard to their own lives, they rushed into those buildings to save people and guide them away from the carnage around them. Countless acts of heroism were performed by the firefighters. In face of great peril to themselves, they led thousands away to safety. Even as the towers were collapsing, firemen were climbing the stairs to reach the trapped victims.
At the end of that terrible day, 343 members of New York's fire department had also been murdered. 2,606 people perished in New York. The destruction was so horrific and the carnage so complete that 24 years later, 40% of those murdered have yet to be identified.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Paul Conway. Paul, a third-generation firefighter, served with the Milwaukee Fire Department for over 30 years before retiring as Assistant Chief of Operations. Mr. Conway traveled to New York within days of the attacks to assist in the search and recovery operations, where he spent 2 months at Ground Zero supporting the New York Fire Department in those efforts.
The importance in all our communities of the police, fire, and EMT personnel cannot be overstated. We should all be grateful and comforted by the fact that when needed, they will come to our aid. Please welcome Assistant Chief Paul Conway, who will speak to us about the ongoing impact of 9/11/2001, the journey through grief, and how to lead with honor, courage, and commitment.
Mr. Conway.
Yes, this is going to be harder than I thought. I wanted to thank you all for being here today, and I wanted to thank you most of all for giving me the opportunity. Normally I would spend this day with my friends I was working with, or I would spend this day in solitude with my bride. So what you're about to hear is my recollection of September 11th, 2001. It was a gorgeous, beautiful September morning. One of those fall mornings that you just live for. Beautiful sunny skies, warm, very, very lovely. It was just an amazing day in Wisconsin as it was in New York. I remember getting up that morning, I was off duty. My oldest son was already at school. My 2 little ones were with their mom having breakfast. I decided I better jump into the shower so I could get my day started. I planned on going to my business, Conway Shield, that day. So I jumped into the shower. My wife came in. She said, "You have to see this." And I said, "See what?" I'm in the middle of the shower. She said, "A plane just hit the World Trade Center. They thought it was a small plane." And I thought, oh, boys are going to work, because that's what we do. So I started watching and didn't stop. As I watched the second plane strike the tower, strike the South Tower, excuse me, I knew that this was not an accident, nor were they small planes. I sat there glued to the TV, like all of us in this country at that time. I wondered, what does this mean? What will this do to our country? The country we love is now under attack. We are at war. What will this do to us? And then in greater horror, as greater horror filled the screen as I watched the towers collapse. First the south, and then the north. I watched these buildings crash to the ground as you all did. And at that moment, I looked at my wife and I said, many of the brothers just died. Many of my friends just lost their lives. I knew that my friend Tim Brown, an FDNY firefighter assigned to the Office of Emergency Management, who was headquartered out of 7 World Trade Center, would be there. I just prayed that he was among the living. So the day went on. Unknown certainty, I couldn't call him. There were no answers. Just speculation. About 6 p.m., I received a phone call from his brother, Chris Brown, a Providence firefighter, who said, "Timmy is alive." He left me a short message. "I am alive. Everyone else is dead." He called back later and confirm that message, that the information was in fact true, and that most of the people I knew had lost their lives and were murdered that day. I got a call from Tim the next morning, and he said, "We are swamped. I need your help. We are just ridiculously swamped." 7 World Trade Center was gone. Their offices were gone. Their equipment was gone. I said, "I'll be out there on the next plane." I was part of the City of Milwaukee Fire Department I was part of their rescue operations team, so I had background in doing things like this, certainly not to that magnitude. So I arrived there late Thursday afternoon, was on the pile by that evening. I remember flying into New York City, and if you've ever flown into LaGuardia Airport, you know you go right up the East River. And I always look forward to flying into New York because I could see the World Trade Centers shining brightly. And I'd always know we were close to landing. All I saw this time was a column of smoke pouring up from what once was. Their aerial view from the plane was unbelievable. And when I arrived there early that evening, it was truly hell on earth. The lights lit up a gloomy, horrible sight of twisted metal, dust, smoldering fires, debris 6-7 stories high, or higher. Truly a horrible sight. I looked up at the other buildings surrounding the World Trade Center complex, 50 and 60-story buildings that had truly looked as if Satan himself ran his hand down the side of those buildings and tore them apart. It truly was, for me, hell on earth. I want to make it perfectly clear. I didn't dig on that pile. I was assigned to the Office of Emergency Management as a logistics officer. My job was to find them the tools they needed so they could do their job. To give you an idea of our day, our first briefing was at 0500 in the morning, so 5 o'clock in the morning. And we'd work all day through 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We'd retreat to this huge hotel room at the Hotel Del Monaco on 59th and Park Avenue, where, quite frankly, we would drink, catch some shut-eye, and get up and repeat the next day. One of the men I worked with, Chris Brown from Providence, who was also detailed there, posted a note on the door. "I have seen the face of war, and I am a changed man." For me personally, those words could not be more accurate. The amount of sadness, rage, and anger tore at my soul. Some of it I still battle in existence today. But I don't want to talk to you about what I did there. I want to speak to you about the heroes that day. I want to talk to you about the firefighters and police officers who swore an oath to protect the lives at the cost of their own. I want to speak to you about men like Terry Hatton, the captain of Rescue Company 1, a friend of mine who saw Tim Brown in the lobby, gave him a hug, and told him he'd never see him again. Radio traffic confirms that Terry and his crew made it to the 80th floor before they became trapped. There's also a transmission from Captain Patrick Brown of Truck 3, answering him, telling them he was on his way. He will come and get them. There were so many heroes that day working at the fire department, police department, Port Authority Police, or my friend, Chris Blackwell, whom I had the opportunity to teach across the country with. Again, saw Tim Brown, kissed him on the lips, as they had done at many working fires before, and said, "Brother, I love you. I will never see you again." Or Julie's father, Peter Freund of Engine 55, loving father of Julie. There were so many who overcame their fear with love. They had a passion for those they worked with. They were not going to run away. They loved the community they served, and they loved humanity. They knew what was going to happen. They knew their chances weren't good, and yet they went. Because love is light, and light will always overcome the darkness. Love overcomes fear. And on that day, they lived John 15:13, that there's no greater love than to lay down your life for a friend. But like I said at the beginning of this, they took an oath. That was their job. At the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, 3,000 Spartans stood in a gap to defend their homeland against 300,000. On September 11th, first responders did the same. But the fact is, they're not the only ones. There were many unsung heroes, such as Betty Ann Ung, a flight attendant on the first hijacked plane, who amidst the chaos and the terror, was able to hide and make a phone call providing critical information so that the airspace would be closed. There was Rick Riscorla, head of corporate security at Morgan Stanley, who gave his life escorting more than 2,700 of the people he was responsible for to safety, all while singing with them to keep them calm. Wells Crowther, a 24-year-old equities trader who was the man in the red bandana, who rescued more than a dozen people, carrying one of them from the 78th floor of the South Tower on his back to safety, and then returning to save more people. Both Wells and Rick sacrificed their lives for others. But let us not also forget the first responders at the Pentagon, who had their own tragedies to deal with that day. And remember again, those unsung heroes, including Pentagon guide Bo Dobrinsky, who spent hours going back and forth between treating injured people and rescuing more victims from the Pentagon by returning over and over again into the flaming building to save survivors. Let us also remember the brave group of people in Flight 93. Passengers Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Todd Burnett, Jeremy Glick, or Jason Dahl. The pilot Leroy Homer, the first officer who tried to fight off the attackers against these terrorist hijackers, preventing the plane from reaching its target, the Capitol building. The plane instead crashed into an empty field in Pennsylvania, killing all 44 on board. Let's also not forget the flight attendants. Sandra Bradshaw and C.C. Lyles, who also played a role in the revolt. Let us also remember those of us all over the country who felt compelled to take action, to give blood, to volunteer at a charity or a hospital. For it was not just New York City's tragedy. It was this country's tragedy. Every American felt the loss that day, the pain, the sorrow. We all lived in horror with what we saw. Let us remember the 2,753 fatalities at the World Trade Center, the 184 at the Pentagon, and the 40 at Shanksville. Let us remember not only that the heroes who were sworn to protect us, but also those who, although not sworn, protected us. Like the Spartans, they stood in the gap to try and make a difference, even as they wrote checks up to and including their own lives. Let us remember the 2,977 souls that were murdered that day. Let us also remember the nearly 3,000 who have passed away from 9/11 illnesses since then. I would be remiss if I did not mention an entire generation of heroes who answered the call, who took the fight to those who murdered innocent Americans. Men like Army Corporal Jason Lemke of West Dallas, who signed up, left his 2 daughters behind. Corporal Jason died January 5th, 2008 in Ibrahim al-Adham, Iraq, of wounds sustained from an IED during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Women like Wisconsin Army National Guard Spec Michelle Whitmer of New Berlin, who was killed by small arms fire in an IED in Baghdad during Operation Iraqi Freedom. And then Army First Lieutenant David A. Johnson of Horicon, who died January 25th, 2012, of injuries caused by an IED in the Kandahar province of Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. Corporals Richard Nelson and Dean Opik, United States Marine Corps, killed April 14th, 2008 by a roadside IED in the Anbar province of Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom. And thousands more like them fighting the global war on terror. Many who did survive returned with the injuries of war, a testament to their sacrifice and bravery. Those that are missing limbs or scars that we cannot see, traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress, debilitating things, they are all heroes. I would also like to thank my family. My ex-wife, Amy, who did everything she could to deal with me and what I was going through. My children, James, Jesse, and Sarah, whose love was always there. It was a beacon of light at times in a sea of darkness. And to my bride, Pam, who makes every day a blessing from God. She is truly an angel. They, like all first responder families, are heroes. You see, they did not raise their right hand. And they are as affected by the loss and the suffering of this job. However, as I said, light will always take away the darkness. Out of this tragedy, many good things were sprouted. Organizations such as Tunnel to Towers, a foundation which provides homes for families of fallen and injured military servicemen and first responders. They've also set out now to end veteran homelessness. Critical equipment was provided to municipalities like the city of Milwaukee to prepare us and to set up specialized teams to handle the new threat space. Let us walk away from here today making this commitment that we will never forget. We will live our lives in their honor. We will live the life they never had a chance to live and do the best every day. Let us follow the examples of people like Joe Angelini III, who became an FDNY firefighter after losing his father and his grandfather on that day. Brendan Stackpole, who also became a firefighter on FDNY after losing his father on that day. Let us live a life of service, as John Vigiano Sr. did, a storied captain with the FDNY, who lost both his sons on that day. John would frequently visit Walter Reed Hospital and thank wounded servicemen for what they did. He later also died of 9/11 illness. And if ever we are put in a position to stand in that gap, to make a difference, we will be like them and be bold, remembering what they did on that day and striving to live up to their example. I believe that's what they would expect of us. I thank you all for letting me speak here today. God bless all of you. God bless the families of those lost. God bless America. Thank you very much.
It is my great honor. Well, first off, thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. But It is my great honor that I get to introduce to you our second speaker, my very dear friend, Julie Henneberry. Julie is the daughter of fallen New York City firefighter Lieutenant Peter Louis Freud, who was murdered in the line of duty September 11, 2001, when he rushed into the North Tower. Freund was a 22-year veteran of the FDNY and worked out of Engine Company 55 on that day, on the day of the attacks. Born and raised in Westtown, Julie grew up about 90 minutes northwest of the city, and she was just 10 years old when her father was killed in the collapse of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Julie attended college in Savannah, Georgia, graduating with a bachelor's in fine arts. Julie moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on September 12, 2013, where she currently resides with her husband and their young son. In 2024, Julie was added as a board member to the Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial. To honor her father, Julie recently ran the 2024 New York City Marathon for the Tunnel of Towers Foundation. In October of this year, she'll be running the Chicago Marathon for Ignite the Spirit Fund. Today, this will be Julie's first time publicly sharing her experience as a child whose parent was killed in the attacks of September 11, 2001. We are lucky to have this chance to hear her speak about what her journey was these last 24 years, what her journey has been like these last 24 years. Let's welcome Julie.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Julie Henneberry, and I'm here to tell you about my personal experience and the ripple effects that September 11th, 2001 have had on my life. These events of September 11th may have happened to our country and changed the world, but I have to live with the aftermath personally every single day. I'm here today to share my dad's story, which also affects my own. I'm here today because as these events become more distant, more stuff of history books, and close to the heart memories, I'm afraid that's when we as a collective society start to ignore the lessons we learned from these events, like what happened on that clear sky Tuesday morning 24 years ago. And those events start to seem less real, less impactful to our world today. We cannot let these stories recede into irrelevance. I am the daughter of Lieutenant Peter Louis Freund. My father was murdered on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. He was 45 years old. His time of death was approximately 10:28 a.m. when the North Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. I had my father for almost 11 years of my life. I've lived more life without him than I did with him, yet he continues to influence me every single day. I didn't get to know my dad as an adult, but I'm lucky that he kept journals. I'm even luckier that I took those journals with me when I officially left New York for Wisconsin on September 12th, 2013. Through his journals, I've learned about him, who he was, his opinions, his likes and dislikes, straight from him, even though he's been gone for 24 years. Through these journals, family members, and his friends, I am piecing together the person I call Dad, not just as the firefighter he died as, but also the person that he was. My dad was born in Norfolk, Virginia on December 19, 1955. He was raised on Staten Island with his 3 siblings. He was the oldest. In college, he drove cross country with his buddies. He joined the FDNY in 1979. In his early 30s, he backpacked through Europe. Eventually, he settled down in 1987 and moved with my mother to upstate New York. My siblings and I were raised in Westtown, New York, which was as far from the city the FDNY would allow its members to live at the time. My dad loved astronomy. On our dead-end street, he painted a measured representation of the solar system. Every morning, for the school bus, we waited at the sun he had painted. Way at the other end of the cul-de-sac was the tiny planet Pluto. Sometimes I wonder if those planets are still there. He taught me the constellations. Still, to this day, I can find the Big and Little Dipper because of him. He rooted for the Yankees and Giants. He loved the Grateful Dead. He donated blood every chance he could, and he exercised vigorously. Growing up, we had a small black and white Jack Russell named Phoebe. Phoebe would get loose sometimes and dart around the street. And when Phoebe would get loose, there was my dad right behind her, sprinting barefoot to try to catch that little dog. He loved to kick back and have a beer. I have a memory of being 5 or 6 years old and figuring out how to work a pop top on a can and opening like 6 beers at once, and my dad going, "Well, now I have to drink them all." I remember being 3 years old and my dad picking me and my sister up from preschool, and I had a bathroom accident in the parking lot and bawling my eyes out, and my dad going, "I don't know what to do." I laugh now as a parent myself. Here's this man, 6'2", can tackle a fire, getting frazzled because he can't figure out what to do when a toddler has an accident. My father was a member of the fire department of New York City. He worked at an engine company 55 located in Little Italy on the island of Manhattan. On the evening of September 10, 2001, my family last spoke to my dad on the phone. It was on one of those spiral corded phones that was attached to the wall. I remember the last conversation I had with my dad. I was telling him my supply list for the new school year. The last thing I told him was that I needed a dictionary. His reply was, yeah, we'll get you a dictionary. I can still hear the rolling of his eyes, like what does a 6th grader need a dictionary for? To officially report to be heading to the World Trade Center only moments after the first plane's impact. I have learned from firsthand accounts and video evidence of my father's last hours on this earth before being crushed to death by the collapse of the North Tower, the same tower he watched a passenger airliner slam into. Engine Company 55 arrived outside the North Tower and walked into the lobby, which was now a command post. Windows were blown out and bodies were falling. It is estimated that about 200 people jumped from above the impact zones because there was no way to get out and smoke was filling the floors, making it impossible to breathe. My dad, along with firefighter Stephen Russell, firefighter Chris Mazzullo, and firefighter Robert Lane, were told to start climbing immediately after entering the lobby of the North Tower. With full gear and carrying hoses, they began climbing the North Tower. They climbed with every intention of reaching the fire above the 81st floor. They climbed up when everyone else was climbing down. A fireman in full gear and hoses can take about a minute to climb a single story, and these men were anticipating climbing over 80 stories just to get there. It was while they were climbing that approximately 9:03 a.m. United Airline Flight 175 was purposely flown into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. My dad would have never seen the second plane, but he would have felt it. I've been told that it felt like an earthquake inside the North Tower. According to firefighters who survived the collapse, my dad climbed as high as the 26th floor. He was last seen by a surviving member of the FDNY working on a civilian. I have been told that Engine 55 most likely stopped climbing to help someone who was having a medical emergency. An injury or heart attack, we may never know exactly. After the collapse of the South Tower at 9:59 a.m., and after the Mayday for the North Tower was called, my dad was told by a fellow firefighter, "Pete, we gotta go." And he responded, "We will leave when we're done here." He unselfishly put people over procedure. The North Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed at 10:28 a.m. From where his body was found, we can determine my dad was descending the North Tower. He made it down to somewhere in the teens. I've asked countless times, both to myself and out loud, why did he not leave? Why did he not leave at the very least when the Mayday was made? When I ask other firefighters this question, I always get the same answer. You can't just abandon people. I've been told that Oh, do you want? Is it working? Okay. I've been told that in the moments before death, when you know it's the end, you're overwhelmed with a sense of calm. I have been told that my father probably thought of his family as the North Tower began to collapse around him. His ultimate cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. It fills me with both frustration and pride that my dad stayed behind to help a stranger in need. He gave his life for people he did not know. I was 10 years old on September 11, 2001, just a week shy of my 11th birthday. I understood my dad was a firefighter, but I never imagined what it really meant. I sat in my 6th grade art class as my teacher turned on the TV. I watched the buildings on fire, but I did not understand the gravity of what was happening. I had no panic. I had no fear. What was happening on the TV felt far away. I still had that childhood illusion that bad things happen to other people. It wasn't until a few hours later when my mother picked us up from school that I realized something was very wrong. I saw the look on my mother's face and knew something had happened to my dad. Amongst the throngs of other people picking up their kids from Menacing Valley Middle School, I saw my mother at the top of the stairs and asked, "Is he hurt?" In June 2001, there was a fire that took multiple lives of members of the FDNY. It's often referred to as the Father's Day fire. I remember shortly after that fire, my dad said to my siblings and I that his job is very dangerous and sometimes daddies don't come home. I remember asking him, "But you're always going to come home, right?" And he responded, "I'll do my best." But I don't think my dad did his best to come home on September 11, 2001. I think he did his best to try to save other people instead. As strange as it may sound, my family was one of the lucky ones who got my dad back, albeit in pieces. Most of my father was found in late October 2001. I remember being in our living room and some men came to the house. One of the firefighters assigned to help my family had his little boy with him. I remember the little boy looking up and asking his dad, "Did they find Mr. Freund?" They did find Mr. Freund. When the body of a fireman was found at Ground Zero, all operations stopped. The company which the fireman belonged to was notified to come down to the pile to come get their guy. Covering the body in an American flag, all rescue and recovery workers would salute as the remains left Ground Zero. My father's funeral was held on October 30th, 2001. The funeral itself was a blur. I was so young, I remember crying heavily. I have since tracked down and read the newspaper article that covered my father's funeral. Quote, "The American flag, hoisted 25 feet high by 2 ladder trucks, formed an arch over the hill on Mount Hope Road. The shiny red Mack bumper carried Freund's coffin under the flag as the honor guard of New York City firefighters, police officers, and others snapped to attention. The sounds of amazing grace from the bagpipes mixed with the bitter wails of a young woman crying." It would be later in 2005, I remember hearing my mother screaming on the phone with what I now know is with the medical examiner, shouting, "And what am I supposed to do with an arm?" I remember slowly closing my bedroom door. I learned in 2023 that my dad has come back in 5 pieces to date. The latest find of him was identified in 2010. The medical examiner has told me that it's mostly all body. It took me nearly 20 years after the events of September 11, 2001 to start to piece together what happened to my father and have the courage to seek answers to my questions. It was after having my little boy that I wanted to be able to tell him about his grandpa and how brave he was. I wanted to find out for me, for my son, and also for my dad. So his story isn't lost to the history books. Because if we don't know what happened, if his story is never shared, it'll be lost to future generations. So here I am to own this, and I'm not going to let it own me. Over the years, I've realized as you age, your memory offers new perspectives. When I was young, I was so angry that my dad left us. As an adult, I still hold that anger, but there's also a feeling of pride. My dad lost his life that day, but he showed us what was in his soul by staying in that building. On September 11th, On September 11, 2001, my dad showed the ultimate act of selflessness and concern for the well-being of others. He acted with love for his fellow human being, for someone he didn't know, and he knew he could not abandon them. Our lives are all about the choices you make. My father chose to go into that burning building a plane flew into. He chose to go up those stairs, and he chose to stay. He stayed to help people in need. That choice also meant leaving his family behind. I'm sure he did not imagine what his absence would do to us, both as a family unit and to us individually. My dad gave his life trying to save strangers. It wasn't the concern of race, gender, or religion. He saw a person in need and didn't leave them. Every day I try to honor my father's memory and remind myself whose daughter would I be if I didn't try to help others too. We all will experience loss and hurt in our lives. That is human nature, and it is unavoidable. Personal tragedies like 9/11 was to me can destroy someone. Or over time, you can learn from and build upon it. I have learned that there is no expiration on grief. It has been 24 years since September 11, 2001, and I can still feel that hurt inside that little 10-year-old girl wondering what's going on. This is not something to get over. It's not something to forget just because time passes. It is something you learn how to live with. It becomes a part of your story as a whole. I have found myself searching for answers to questions like, at what point are you supposed to stop reacting to this trauma? At what point are you supposed to stop thinking about this trauma? I've learned that it's normal to have it there. The challenge is to not stop thinking about it. It's to find a way to live life with it and not let it live your life for you. Grief and sadness are not fun parts of being human, but they are important parts. We will all experience loss and sadness in our lives, but instead of running from it, it's better to feel it, talk about it, and walk through it than spend a lifetime being silently poisoned by it. Having the courage to face something as hard as grief does not mean fearing it or not feeling sad from it. Courage to face grief means recognizing it and resisting its urge to be a dark shadow over the rest of your life. From the moment of the loss to years later, it will still be felt fresh as the first day. And it may seem difficult at first and contradictory to the saying, time will not heal this wound, but it does make it easier. But only if you embrace a life to be lived with it. I have seen family members become shells of who they should have been under the weight of their untouched grief and sadness, and our lost loved ones wouldn't have wanted that for us. So I keep engaging with the struggle. I keep moving forward with this grief as a permanent state of being. But instead of seeing it as an enemy, I embrace it as a friend, because grief is a sign that they were loved. Perhaps a way to cope with grief is allowing yourself the permission to welcome this unplanned future wholeheartedly, despite the sadness that follows you due to a tragedy. It's about giving yourself the permission to participate in, to cherish, and take chances in life. Give yourself the permission to appreciate joy again, and think of your missed loved ones and appreciate the joy that those people brought into your life, and try to pass it along to others. As we remember those lost on September 11th today, the 24th anniversary, I hope you all take away from my story that these were real lives lost, real families affected. Even if the event happened what feels like far away and what may seem like a long time ago, for families like us, it feels like it's only been moments. Remember those heroes of 9/11 and try to set a good example of what America really means to generations to come. My dad climbed almost 30 flights of stairs in full fireman's gear for others, and he stayed to help others in need, even if it meant leaving his family behind. The least we can do is try to be kind to one another. Remember, you can't just abandon people in need. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of all of us, we would like to thank Julie. Thank you for sharing your story, your strength, your family's sacrifice. It's with all of us. And it's voices like Julie's that remind us why we are here today, to remember, to honor, and to make sure that the lessons of September 11th are never lost to time. When this memorial was first dedicated, it was with the understanding that it would not just be a place of remembrance, but also a place of education. We have many schools here today, and we're greatly appreciative of that. Over the years, we've welcomed thousands of students, veterans, first responders, and families from across Wisconsin, and each visit is a chance for us to teach these stories, to reflect, and to inspire. And today I'm very honored to share the next chapter in that mission. Here at the site of the Kewaskum Annex building, we are pleased to announce that we will be building the Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial Museum and Education Center. This new space will allow us to bring history to life for future generations. We'll house exhibits that tell the stories of the victims, highlight their heroism, of the first responders, and shine a light on many Wisconsinites whose lives were forever changed that day. We'll serve as a community gathering space where students can learn year-round, neighbors can connect, and all of us can reflect. We've partnered with American Architectural Group and American Construction Services, and we're proud to share that the Village of Kewaskum has already approved the concept. The design for the new museum and education center is modest in size, but very thoughtful in purpose. It includes an exhibit space where artifacts and stories will be carefully displayed, a flexible community space with room for students and events, an inviting entrance that connects seamlessly to the memorial that you see here today, and many other amenities that we will share with you in the coming weeks and months as we begin the fundraising efforts for this building. Every detail is shaped with reflection education, symbolism, and accessibility in mind. You see one rendering here today. And after today's program, we invite you to, inside the annex, to take a look at the renderings, the other renderings that are on display. They'll give you the first glimpse of the new chapter, both for what it will look like on the outside and from the inside. And for those of you who would like to learn more or share it with others, we will soon have the full set of renderings and details available on our website. This will be a living resource to keep you updated as the project moves along. It is a huge milestone for our organization, but it's also a promise to you, to every family member, every survivor, every service member, every student, that Wisconsin will always remember. We thank you, all of you here today, and all of those who have helped us along the way, for standing with us on this journey. Now we carry these stories in our hearts, and now we will turn to music to continue our tribute. Please welcome the Greater Milwaukee Fire and Police Pipes and Drums as they play Amazing Grace and Going Home. All right, thank you very much. On behalf of Kewaskum members 9/11 Inc., I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. Your presence honors the memory of those who were killed and the strengths and our promise to never forget. We're grateful to our speakers here today, the musicians, our volunteers, and our community partners who made today's ceremony possible. And we thank all of you for continuing the support of the Wisconsin 9/11 Memorial and Education Center. Moraine Park Technical College, just down the road in West Bend, there will be a traveling exhibit called the Tunnel to Towers mobile exhibit. It is awe-inspiring, and I invite you to join us on those dates. More information will be made available on social media and on our website. And may we leave here today carrying forward the lessons of September 11th. Resilience, community, unity, and our commitment to remember. Thank you.